Nick Clegg has used his first major speech as Deputy Prime Minister to promise the biggest shake-up of democracy since the 19th century. The coalition government is proposing an elected House of Lords and a referendum on changing the voting system. Mr Clegg, who outlined plans to scrap ID cards and limit the use of CCTV, said he wanted people to have more control over the state. Here's our political editor, Nick Robinson.
Today, a government that looks different promised it would be different by giving you more and them less power, freedom and control.
This government is going to transform our politics so that the state has far less control over you and you have far more control over the state. This government is going to break up concentrations of power and hand power back to people.
Nick Clegg is promising the greatest shake-up in our democracy since, well, the Great Reform Act of 1832. It gave millions of people the vote. He says he'll give us a referendum on the voting system, elections for the House of Lords, and a revolution in the way that our politics is financed. All ideas that might interest you, but of course in the decades, the hundreds of years that these bills have filled the parliamentary archives, they've been talking about exactly that. The promises came in the first speech by the first Liberal to hold government office in 65 years. He insists his reforms are not just about the way Westminster works, but your freedoms too. Plans for ID cards will be scrapped, he said. So too the proposed contact point database of 11 million children. And the use of CCTV and the storage of innocent people's DNA will be restricted.
What Nick Clegg is doing is taking a number of measures that have been Lib Dem obsessions for many years, and he's now got license to put them together to suggest that we live in some kind of surveillance society. We do not. And on issues like the DNA database, I think he's dangerously restricting the police's ability to catch dangerous criminals.
Dangerous too, the critics say, are laws which led a court to block the deportation of 2 terror suspects in order to protect their human rights. Before the election, the Tories promised to review the law. The Lib Dems opposed that and terror control orders. Today, the Deputy Prime Minister sounded a little hesitant.
Every single measure will be taken to make sure that as these 2 individuals are released from custody and from the courts, they are nonetheless kept under surveillance and controlled in a manner which means that they cannot do any harm to the British people.
Perhaps it's no wonder there hasn't been a Great Reform Act for 178 years. Nick Robinson, BBC News, Westminster.
And we can speak to James